The mission failed. Marco sent me to prison. He said, "You'll take her place in prison when you're released. I'll marry you, Marco. I'm going to die." I smiled coldly and told him, word by word, "Don't threaten me with death." He said indifferently, "If you really are going to die, then saving her life would be perfect. Totally worth it." Later, he came with dozens of wedding cars to pick me up when I was released. But all that was left of me was just a box of ashes. Chapter 1. You'll take her place in prison when you're released. I'll marry you. Marco's cold voice rang in my ears. I was a strategist. My mission was to make Marco fall in love with me. This was the 5th year of my pursuit of him, and also the final year. For 5 years, I had hovered around him like a simp. No matter how his friends mocked and ridiculed me, no matter how much he rejected and despised me, I stayed by his side all the same, caring for him in every possible way. Down to the smallest detail, I could feel his attitude toward me changing, little by little, just when I thought victory was within reach. An accident happened. That night, Anna and I went to a bar to drink. Anna was Marco's first love, the woman he had loved for years but could never have. Anna had someone she liked. But that person didn't like her. He liked another woman instead. The four-way emotional standoff among them shifted subtly because of my presence. After Anna's confession failed once again, she came to me to drink her sorrows away, in order to please Marco. I could even befriend my romantic rival. I drank heavily with Anna, until I was completely drunk. I don't remember how Anna and I left. When I woke up, all I heard was Anna crying, dazed. I saw Anna sitting in the driver's seat, her whole body shaking as she made a phone call. "Marco, I killed someone. I'm so scared." Only then did I realize, not far from Anna's car, a bloodied body lay motionless on the ground. I immediately got out of the car, wanting to check on the person. "Selena, where are you going?" Anna grabbed me. "I need to see if the person is still alive. If there's a chance, we have to call an ambulance," I said urgently. No ambulance." Anna clutched my hand desperately. "I can't go to prison. But what if this person can still be saved?" I pushed Anna away and got out of the car. She hurried after me and grabbed me again, refusing to let me go closer. We shoved and pulled each other on the deserted road, until Marco arrived at the scene. Anna threw herself into his arms and cried loudly, "Marco, Selena wants to call the police and get me arrested." Marco glanced at me. His eyes were sharp and icy, full of disgust. He walked over to the person lying on the ground and said slowly, "He's already dead." Anna's legs went weak. She collapsed to the ground, muttering in breakdown, "No. I can't go to prison. I don't want to go to prison. I have a concert in half a month. That concert is very important to me. I can't have anything happen. Woo woo woo." She cried uncontrollably. Marco walked over and pulled her into his arms, comforting her. Anna clung to him even tighter. "Marco, I don't want to go to prison. I really don't. If I go to prison, my entire life will be ruined." She cried hysterically. Marco's heart ached for her. He said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." After saying that, he looked up at me. I thought, finally, he had noticed me. But instead, I heard his chilling voice say, "Selena, you were the one who hit the person." Chapter 2. I thought I had heard wrong. I stared at him in a daze. Anna's crying stopped abruptly as well. She pulled away from Marco's arms and turned to look at me. In her eyes, I saw a glimmer of joy. "I didn't hit anyone." I struggled to control my emotions and said it loudly. "It was you," Marco said decisively. "I'll call the police right now. I'll hire the best lawyers for you and help reduce your sentence." I laughed. For the first time, I laughed in anger because of how badly Marco treated me. "Marco, I'll say it one more time. I didn't hit anyone. I will not lie to the police." My emotions spiraled out of control. Anna can't go to prison. Marco ignored my emotions completely, his coldness terrifying. "She can't, so I can?" I asked sarcastically. "She's a pianist. She has a brilliant future ahead of her. Her life cannot have a single stain. So my life deserves stains?" I suppressed the trembling of my body. I, Selena, have never done anything against my conscience in my entire life. Why should I ruin my reputation because of Anna? Marco, you can't be this double standard. You can't be this selfish. What does your life have besides love? He asked indifferently. My chest tightened. For the first time, I felt how pitiful all my years of devotion were. So this was how cheap my love for Marco was in his eyes. You'll take her place in prison when you're released. I'll marry you, Marco said, his tone filled with condescension, as if marrying me were some tremendous favor. Heh, I laughed in disbelief. The system reminded me in my ear, host, don't agree. This year is your final year to complete the mission. If you go to prison, it will count as a default failure. Marco, I'm going to die. I smiled coldly and told him, word by word, don't threaten me with death. He said coldly, if you really are going to die, then saving her life would be perfect. Totally worth it. I don't agree. I broke down uncontrollably. You should believe in my power. You have no room to resist. Marco threatened coldly. Yes. In Jing City, Marco was all-powerful. Taking the blame for someone else was effortless. Selena, know when to stop, Marco said. When you get out, you'll thank yourself for everything you did today. So they wanted me to go to prison for a crime I didn't commit, and still be grateful for it. Marco sent me to prison. I was sentenced to 3 years. In the first year of imprisonment, I was erased by the system and died in prison. I then became a wandering soul, permanently bound to Marco. The system said this was the punishment for mission failure. 3 years passed. Boss, tomorrow is Miss Selena's release date. Marco's assistant reminded him. Marco looked up from his documents. In these 3 years, he had never once visited me in prison. If not for the assistant's reminder, he probably would have already forgotten that I had ever existed. Chapter 3. I saw Marco remain silent for a long time. He was probably thinking, who exactly Miss Selena even was. Boss? The assistant couldn't help calling out to him again. Got it. Marco replied indifferently. The assistant had no idea what Marco was planning and could only leave respectfully. After he left, Marco buried himself back in work. Whether I was released from prison or not meant nothing to him. Perhaps he had even forgotten that he had promised to marry me when he sent me in. Of course, I didn't expect him to marry me either. After all, I was already dead. Dead for 2 years. These 2 years had made me see everything clearly. To me now, Marco was nothing more than a failed mission. There were no other feelings mixed in. All I wished for now was for him to die sooner. Only after he died could I finally be reincarnated. After a long while, Marco seemed to have finished his work. He stood up from his chair. Then he called the assistant again. You said earlier, Selena is being released tomorrow? Floating in the air, I laughed bitterly. Should I be grateful that he still remembered me at all? Even though my matters were always his lowest priority. I was even wondering, if he hadn't finished his work today, would he have simply forgotten me altogether? Yes, boss. I promised to marry her, Marco said. His tone was flat. Heh, so you still remember that? Huh, arrange a wedding for me. Tomorrow I'll drive directly to the prison to pick her up, Marco instructed. Preparing a wedding on such short notice might keep everything simple, Marco said coldly. Meaning, just give me an explanation. No need for sincerity. I laughed even more bitterly. After everything was arranged, Marco held his phone, hesitating for quite a while. I saw him press Anna's number with a complicated expression. These past 2 years, Marco had kept in contact with Anna. After I went to prison in her place, Anna's career flourished. She was now an internationally renowned pianist, with limitless prospects. Yet she still hadn't ended up with the man she loved. She had remained single all this time. Once, during a late-night emotional breakdown, Anna had called Marco. She asked him to wait for her 2 more years. If after 2 years she was still single, she would marry him. Marco hadn't refused then, though he hadn't agreed either. Now, it hadn't even been 2 years since Anna made that promise. I was genuinely curious. How would he explain this to Anna? Would he really be willing to disappoint Anna? Marco, Anna's soft, Gentle voice called his name. I saw Marco's fingers tighten slightly. He gathered his courage and said, Anna, Selena is being released tomorrow. So soon? Anna blurted out. She likely realized her reaction was wrong and hurriedly corrected herself. She's finally being released. Every time I think of Selena, I feel terribly guilty. I happen to be free tomorrow. I'll go with you to pick her up. You will go, right? I will, Marco replied. After a pause, he added, I'm preparing a wedding for her tomorrow. A wedding? Anna became emotional. You're going to marry her? Yes, I promised her. But, didn't we have an agreement? I'm sorry, Marco said, filled with guilt. Funny, when he sent me to prison, I'd never seen him look like this. Back then, he even thought I had gotten a bargain. Marco, think it through. Marriage isn't child's play. Doing this will only wrong yourself. I know. Marco's voice was heavy, but I promised her, and I can't break my word even if it means wronging myself. I really couldn't help laughing. Marco sacrificing himself to marry me. He really made himself out to be some kind of tragic hero. Chapter 4. Marco. But I can't bear to see you suffer like this, Anna said painfully. Marco didn't speak, but from his expression, it was clear he was full of reluctance and unwillingness. Floating above, I laughed like a madwoman. Marco was nothing more than Anna's backup, yet he believed his deep devotion had truly moved her to guilt. In reality, she was only worried that if she failed to win over the man she loved, she would lose even this fallback option. If it weren't for me, Marco, you wouldn't be like this, Anna said with a choking voice. How about this? Tomorrow I'll go apologize to Selena. We can give her a lot of money and ask her to stop clinging to you. Selena won't take money, Marco said with certainty. She only likes me. I nearly gagged. Yes, back then, for the sake of completing the mission, I really could only like you. But now? Who would ever like a man who sent an innocent woman to prison? There's no system task binding me anymore. I'm not sick, Marco. My mind is made up, Marco said as if he had finally steeled himself. Anna, take good care of yourself in the future. With that, Marco abruptly hung up the phone, as if afraid he might change his mind. I watched his forced sense of righteousness indifferently. Suddenly curious, what kind of expression would he have tomorrow, when he saw my ashes? Surely, he would cry tears of joy. The next day, Marco put on his custom-tailored suit. He looked at himself in the mirror, silent for a long moment, still unwilling. Even now, his assistant urged him carefully several times. Only then did Marco take a deep breath, put on a look of solemn resolve, and walk out of the room. Outside the villa, dozens of luxury cars were lined up. Marco sat in the very first one. My soul followed him, heading toward the prison. For 3 whole years, Marco had never once visited. After I died, the prison staff had called him as well. At the time, he was driving Anna to a concert. Pressed for time, he was driving fast. The staff member asked, "Are you Selena's family member?" "I'm very busy right now. Whatever it is, talk later," Marco said impatiently. "Selena died unexpectedly in prison. You should come over immediately." "What? Trying to fake her death to get me to visit her?" Marco sneered. "Tell her I'm busy. I don't have time." "I said Selena is dead. She can't be dead," Marco said firmly. He must have believed I was still desperately waiting for him to marry me. "Are you Selena's family or not?" The other party was clearly angered by his attitude. "No." Marco hung up the phone directly. After hanging up, he even gently comforted Anna. "Don't worry, I won't let you be late for your concert." I don't know whether, back then, I would have felt even a trace of heartbreak. But looking back now, it all feels like watching a farce. The luxury cars came to a stop at the prison gate. Marco's assistant went to speak with the prison staff. When he came back out, he was holding a box in his arms. I thought that was probably my ashes. I saw Marco frown unhappily and ask him, "Where's Selena? Why hasn't she come out yet?" Chapter 5. The assistant's face darkened, and for a long time he didn't dare to speak. "What?" Do I need to go in and get her myself? Marco said sarcastically. Being able to marry her is already the greatest honor of her life. Go in and tell her, if she still doesn't come out, I'll cancel this wedding immediately. Listening to Marco's words, I could only feel how ridiculous and tragic they were. How humble must I have been back then? For Marco to so confidently believe that marrying me would be the greatest honor of my entire life? Yet he truly never cherished it at all. Mockery was plain in his eyes. Boss. The assistant hesitated, but still spoke. Miss Selena has already passed away. A flicker of panic crossed Marco's impatient face. The next second, he denied it outright. Just like 2 years ago, when he refused to believe I had died. What trick is Selena trying to pull now? That's not it, the assistant explained. Selena died in her first year after entering prison. How is that possible? Marco didn't believe it. She dreamed of marrying me. I agreed to marry her. How could she be dead? The guard said Selena died of sudden cardiac arrest. It was an accident. They also said they called you 2 years ago. But you said you weren't Selena's family. Marco's expression visibly changed. He must have remembered that phone call from 2 years ago. The panic on his face grew more and more obvious. He kept muttering to himself, Selena can't be dead. She can't just be dead like this. Everyone dies. The assistant said softly. Selena won't die. Marco suddenly exploded. She hasn't even married me yet. How could she bear to die? So his loss of control wasn't because I had died. It was because I had deviated from the role he expected me to play. Boss. Selena really is dead. The assistant gathered his courage and said again, these are her ashes. I saw Marco's eyes turn red. He stared for a long time at the urn in the assistant's arms. Then he reached out. His fingers seemed to tremble. Was it fear? Or had a trace of guilt finally surfaced? He took the urn. I saw tears fall from his eyes. The sky must have been raining knives. Marco was crying. Back then, when I helped him drink until I suffered gastric bleeding and was sent to the hospital. Marco didn't even look at me. He turned around and went straight to Anna. Now that I was dead, who was this pitiful display meant for? I watched Marco's grief coldly. It looked as if he were in great pain. Yet in my heart, there wasn't the slightest ripple. After an unknown amount of time, the assistant's phone suddenly rang. After answering it, he asked respectfully, Boss, should the wedding be cancelled? All the guests have already arrived. Marco seemed to come back to his senses. He said, the wedding continues. The assistant was completely dumbfounded. So was I, with no bride. Was he planning to marry a ghost? In fact, I worried too much. When Marco walked into the wedding hall holding my urn, Anna appeared, dressed in a pure white wedding gown. She said, Marco, I've decided to marry you. Are you willing to marry me? So this wedding was nothing more than a tool Marco used to provoke Anna? I laughed wildly from above. Marco, you won't even spare the dead. Aren't you afraid the heavens will strike you down? Chapter 6. The wedding scene had already left all the guests dumbfounded because the bride never showed up. Now, with a new bride suddenly appearing, the entire wedding became utterly absurd. I watched as Marco turned to look at Anna. He was still holding my urn in his arms, while the priest in front of him was conducting the wedding ceremony for me and him. Anna, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, walked step by step toward Marco, her eyes red from crying. At that moment, she looked beautiful and fragile, the kind of woman Marco could never refuse. She spoke with deep emotion. Marco, I always thought what I felt for you was more like sibling affection. I always believed I wasn't in love with you. It was only now that I realized how deeply I love you. Marco said nothing, but I saw his throat move slightly. He was probably struggling to contain his surging emotions. When Anna received no response from him, she continued, I thought about it all night. I even considered stepping aside and letting you marry Selena. I know Selena is a good girl, but the moment I think about you marrying her against your own will, my heart aches unbearably. Marco, I truly can't accept you having to wrong yourself like this. I would feel guilty for the rest of my life. As she spoke, Anna reached out, trying to take Marco's hand. Marco's arms tightened around my urn. I figured the next second he would throw my ashes away. With his first love being so proactive, what reason would he have to refuse? He probably couldn't wait to get rid of me as far as possible. Yet after a long while, he still hadn't put down my urn. nor had he taken Anna's hand. Anna looked embarrassed. Tears welled up in her eyes. Marco? Marco finally spoke. His voice was low as he asked, "Do you really love me?" "I love you," Anna said firmly. "At this moment, I clearly know how much I love you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done something this outrageous. Why did it take until this moment for you to realize it?" Marco asked in return. There was a hint of mockery in his tone. Anna froze for a moment. She probably had never seen Marco like this before. "Isn't everyone like this?" Marco continued, asking Anna, yet it sounded as if he were asking himself as well. "Only when we're truly about to lose something do we feel regret beyond repair?" Anna didn't answer for a long time. Perhaps she didn't know how to answer. She simply changed the subject. "Marco, I know you feel guilty towards Selena, so you feel forced to marry her. But love can't be charity. Doing this will only make both of you miserable. You don't want to hurt Selena, so I'm willing to be the villain for our love. Wherever Selena is, I'll apologize to her in person. Whatever she wants, I'll give it to her. As long as she stops resenting you, I'll do anything." Anna spoke with conviction and apparent sincerity. Marco lowered his gaze. He let his eyes rest on my urn. Anna also looked at my urn. Her brows knit tightly. She probably didn't understand why Marco was holding a wooden box. "Selena is here," Marco said. His voice seemed to choke slightly. Anna's eyes widened. She stared at my urn in disbelief, her voice trembling. Selena is dead?" Marco nodded. The word dead, which no one dared mention in front of him. Only Anna could say it. Anna's expression changed completely. Of course, not because my death saddened her. She had looked down on me from the very beginning. She was probably regretting today's impulsive action. After all, she had only done this because she feared Marco would really marry me and she would lose her backup plan. Now that I was dead, her backup plan would always be there. Chapter 7. How could it be so sudden? Anna still couldn't quite believe it. Who would believe that someone perfectly alive could just die like that? 2 years ago, when I was taking you to your concert, the prison guard called me. Anna shuddered. She must have remembered that day as well. She had heard Marco's phone call too, because it was connected directly to the car's Bluetooth. But at the time, neither of them believed it. They didn't take it seriously at all. "How did she die?" Anna asked. "Sudden cardiac arrest. Instant death." Anna's body trembled in fright. No matter what, people still feel a trace of fear toward the dead. But she quickly regained her composure. She fixed her gaze on my urn and asked Marco excitedly, "Selena is dead, and you still prepared a wedding for her?" "This is what I owe her," Marco said in a low voice. Then, Anna lightly pressed her lips together and said, "Then I'll step aside and let you have this." I laughed, laughing at Marco. I knew it. Anna's move today was only out of fear of losing her backup. Once she realized the backup was still there, she immediately backed out. When I clung to Marco, it was because the system forced me to. Marco clinging to Anna, there was only one word for it: stupid. I figured Marco would never see through Anna's little schemes. In Marco's eyes, Anna was exactly like her name, an angel. "Marco, since this is Selena's last wish, and since this can ease the guilt you feel toward her, I shouldn't be here disrupting your wedding. I'll leave now," Anna said as she turned to go, afraid that Marco might change his mind and marry her instead. "Anna," Marco called out. I wondered if Marco was feeling deeply moved at that moment, moved by Anna's apparent understanding and her constant consideration for him. But then I heard Marco suddenly say, "Do you think I'm that easy to brush off?" What? Anna thought she had misheard. Marco had never spoken to her like that before. Summoned when needed, dismissed when convenient. Marco sneered. "No, how could you think that? I chose to step aside to fulfill you and Selena," Anna said. "To fulfill me and Selena?" Marco grew agitated. "But Selena is already dead. How she died, you and I both know perfectly well." "What are you saying?" "Marco, calm down." Anna was visibly frightened. She was afraid Marco would bring up how I took the blame back then. If Selena hadn't gone to prison, she wouldn't have died. She died in an accident. Even if she hadn't gone to prison, she could still have died. Anna said quickly. "Marco, I know you're grieving, but the dead can't come back. All we can do is mourn." She reached out to grab Marco's hand, trying to placate him. The moment she touched him, he flung her hand away. Anna stared at her own hand for a long time. She couldn't accept Marco's attitude toward her. Not only Anna couldn't accept it, even I couldn't. What I accepted even less was that my system, which had already been erased, suddenly came back to life. Host. Its voice sounded abruptly, startling me as I floated in midair. Why you're back? I asked. Shaken. People scare people. No, ghosts scare ghosts. Enough to scare a ghost to death. Congratulations. Host. Mission complete. The system congratulated me. Try speaking like a normal being. Your target has rejected his first love and married you. This proves that he has fallen in love with you. So your strategy has succeeded. So I can reincarnate early? I asked excitedly. Yes. The system replied, then added ominously. But not entirely. Before I could understand what it meant, a flash of white light burst forth, and I seemed to feel my real body? Chapter 8. Where am I? Who am I? My mind suddenly felt like it had crashed. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether this was reality or a dream. The system spoke beside my ear. Host. Because you completed the mission past the time limit, and because your original body was reduced to nothing but ashes, we could only allow you to be reborn in another body. That part, I could understand. What I couldn't understand was this. Why can I still see Marco? If I had already moved on, shouldn't I have left this world and returned to my original one? Why was I placed here again? I stared straight ahead at the wedding scene, where Marco and Anna were still tearing at each other on the stage, ignoring the guests' shock. Well, it's like this. The system said hesitantly. I had a bad feeling, because there are a limited number of strategists right now, and there's still someone in this world who needs to be conquered. The mission has been reassigned to you. So basically, it's not that I completed the mission and earned reincarnation. I said through clenched teeth. It's that you didn't meet your quota, so you revived me on the spot, right? You can't put it that way, the system said. Not every strategist gets a second chance. It depends on performance. Your professional ability is solid, that's why you were chosen. I felt some resentment, but there was no way to resist. Besides, compared to being a free-floating ghost chained to Marco forever, being human was 10,000 times better. Then tell me, I asked calmly, who am I supposed to conquer now? And who am I? The system explained patiently. Your new target is Cameron. Who? Cameron. The system repeated. Yes, the man Anna has been desperately pursuing for years without success. What a karmic entanglement. And what's my identity this time? I asked. Why don't you look down? The system prompted. I lowered my head. I was wearing a server's uniform, holding a tray in my hands. So I was a hotel server now? A server at the very hotel where Marco was holding his wedding. I really thank your ancestors for this, I said bitterly. The system answered seriously. I don't have ancestors, nor 18 generations, only system upgrades. Then how am I supposed to get close to a high-end mighty ice prince like Cameron? I asked, forcing myself to stay calm. I knew a bit about Cameron. Back when I was trying to conquer Marco, I had thoroughly researched everyone connected to him. His first love's first love was, of course, within scope. Cameron was the cold, distant, ascetic type of handsome man, far harder to approach than Marco. Anna had chased him for years and never even touched a single strand of his hair. Cameron has been looking for a maid recently. The system said, you can try. It might work. While I was talking to the system, the wedding resumed. I saw Anna finally leave. Marco didn't chase after her. His expression toward her had turned cold. He was holding my urn. No, that was no longer me. Selena was already dead. I was no longer Selena. My name was now Victoria. I had nothing to do with Selena anymore. I stood in the hall, watching Marco hold the urn and recite his vows, watching him kiss the urn, watching him announce to everyone that Selena was his wife. Some people in the crowd were even moved to tears by Marco. All I felt was, how melodramatic, and how ridiculous. Chapter 9. After the wedding ended, I went straight to Cameron's villa to apply for a maid position. Back when I was trying to conquer Marco, Taking care of people was something I did effortlessly. But the moment Cameron saw me, he rejected me outright without asking a single question. Anyone under 50? No. Sir, are you seriously discriminating by age? I asked him. Where exactly am I worse than a 50-year-old auntie? I'm afraid you'll develop improper thoughts about me, Cameron said bluntly. I nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. This man really knows how to judge people. Just as I was racking my brain for a rebuttal, I heard Cameron's stomach growl loudly. The system immediately reminded me in my ear. Host, if you want to capture a man's heart, you must first capture his stomach. That didn't work on Marco. I shot back. But isn't he regretting it now? Who knows whether that's love or just guilt? Desperate times call for desperate measures. The system strongly advised. I nodded and hurriedly said to Cameron, I can cook. Then added, very well. Just as Cameron was about to refuse, I forced my eyes to redden. Sir, could you please give me one chance to cook for you? I really need this job. My parents passed away, and I still have 2 younger siblings to support. They're about to start college. There was obvious disgust in Cameron's eyes, but his stomach betrayed him again with 2 ill-timed growls. In the end, he dropped a single sentence. If it doesn't taste good, leave immediately. Deal. I briskly entered Cameron's villa and headed straight into the open kitchen. The system fed me information through my ear. Cameron, 28 years old, currently single, no confirmed romantic interest. Wait, my knife paused mid-chop. Doesn't Cameron like, that person? The data I collected says he doesn't. It's likely just a public claim to ward off unwanted attention, rotten peaches like Anna. For once, the system said something that pleased me. Rotten peach Anna. The system continued. Cameron has irregular eating habits and suffers from stomach issues. His condition flared up recently. You should prepare light, stomach-friendly food. Also, he dislikes greasy dishes and prefers fish. Completely different from Marco's tastes. No wonder the people they liked were completely different too. Due to his family background, Cameron actually craves warmth. He's not as unapproachable as he appears. He's just socially anxious and lacks a sense of security. I've seen him at work. He doesn't look socially anxious at all. I suspected the system was lying. Then he's pretending. Fine, you win. I quickly prepared a steamed sea base, a plate of cold mixed vegetables, and a pot of seafood congee. Sir, dinner is ready. Cameron glanced at me and sat down at the table. Reluctantly, he picked up the bowl and took a sip of the congee. From the subtle change in his expression, I could tell he was satisfied. Please. Back when I was chasing Marco, I was one step away from getting a Michelin chef certificate. After the congee, he slowly picked up a piece of sea base, then another, and another. Before long, every dish on the table was completely cleared. Only then did he seem to realize I was still standing there. He paused for 2 seconds and said, Don't develop improper thoughts about me. Then he put down his chopsticks and walked away. It took me a while to process it. I had been hired. Overjoyed, I stayed by Cameron's side, handling his daily needs. But honestly, he was extremely difficult to get close to. He habitually kept his distance. If I showed even a little enthusiasm, like trying to take his coat after he changed, he would dodge away. Once, after he finished showering, I was washing his clothes when I picked up his boxer briefs. He snatched them back instantly and warned me angrily. Mind your boundaries. Isn't this literally my job? That time, though, his ears turned red. All in all, conquering Cameron was anything but easy. Of course, if it were easy, he wouldn't be a conquest target. Today, Cameron turned 28. Many guests came to his villa, all uninvited. Every time Cameron opened the door, I saw his brow furrow deeper. He truly disliked socializing, but his conditions were too outstanding. People naturally flocked to him. Among the crowd, I saw Anna, being overly attentive. Unexpectedly, I also saw Marco. Chapter 10. It had been 2 months since Marco's so-called wedding. What exactly was Anna and Marco's relationship now? Was Marco still Anna's backup? Was loving Anna really enough for him to indulge her without limits, to the point of accompanying her to celebrate a rival's birthday? So Marco's attitude toward Anna at that wedding was nothing more than a moment of impulsive emotion. After all, the dead are paramount. Once that period passed, he was still more than willing to indulge Anna. I sneered softly, but there were no real ripples in my heart. To me, the past was like the wind, not worth lingering over. After a busy morning, I finally prepared a full table of dishes. Everyone sat around a large table. Anna naturally took the seat beside Cameron. Marco, on the other hand, sat in the farthest corner. He looked somewhat lonely. On closer inspection, he seemed to have lost quite a bit of weight. Serves him right. Cameron, the food your maid cooked is unbelievably good. A guest suddenly exclaimed in surprise. This braised pork belly is absolutely the best I've ever had. Cameron gave a brief response. Not particularly warm. He treated everyone with the same cool indifference. That actually made me feel balanced. Is it really that good? Let me try, Anna said proactively, picking up a piece and putting it into her mouth. Delight flickered in her eyes. It really is delicious, not too sweet, not too salty, soft and tender, rich but not greasy. It's just. After finishing her appraisal, she suddenly murmured, "Why does this taste feel so familiar?" It's a bit like Selena's cooking back then. The moment those words fell, the dining room fell silent. Had the name Selena become taboo now? Such a mood killer. I saw everyone's gaze involuntarily turn toward Marco. Marco looked calm. He leisurely picked up a piece of braised pork, put it into his mouth, and said while chewing, "Not as good as what Selena made." Mid-sentence, his voice abruptly stopped. He froze in place, as if turned to stone. Was the flavor too familiar? Because Marco loved braised pork, I had gone out of my way to learn from professionals and spent a long time adjusting the seasoning to match his preferences before finally perfecting a flavor he liked. "Marco?" Anna called softly. She had clearly noticed something was wrong. Marco seemed not to hear her. His gaze landed on me. As the maid, I was of course standing by the table, waiting for instructions. "How can you make braised pork like this?" Marco asked me, his eyes already red. That sudden surge of emotion startled me. When had I ever seen him so agitated? Isn't braised pork made the same way everywhere? I just learned it online. I made up an excuse casually. "Impossible. This is Selena's exclusive secret recipe. No one else could make it." He retorted loudly. Yes, it had indeed once been an exclusive recipe made just for him. But back then, he had repeatedly asked me to cook it for Anna too, saying Anna liked it as well. Love that arrives too late is really cheap. Who exactly are you? What relationship do you have with Selena? Marco stood up from the table and walked over to me, looking down at my unfamiliar face. "Marco, what's wrong with you?" "Calm down," Anna called softly, clearly frightened by his demeanor. Marco's bloodshot eyes remained fixed on me, as if he were trying to see something familiar. "You're Selena, aren't you?" Marco suddenly said with certainty. "When I saw you busy in the kitchen earlier, I felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity." "So you are Selena." "Selena, you're not dead, you're just deliberately messing with me, right? I knew you wouldn't die." As he spoke, he reached out to pull me into his arms. Cameron grabbed me and pulled me away. This seemed to be my first moment of physical closeness with Cameron. He shielded me behind him and said to Marco coldly, "Marco, she is my person. Show some respect." Chapter 11. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. It was a completely unguarded flutter. I couldn't remember how long it had been since I last felt the sensation of being protected. Ever since becoming a strategy target, all I had known was humble endurance and one-sided giving. "She is Selena, my wife," Marco roared. "I'm not. My name is Victoria," I said directly. Cameron didn't speak. I did. "There's no mistake. You are Selena." "Selena, come home with me, okay? I know I was wrong. I'll never treat you like that again." "Selena," Marco kept calling my name over and over. His expectant gaze overflowed with what looked like deep affection. It was truly irritating. "Sir, I'll say it one more time, I am not Selena. If you're sick, please go to a psychiatric hospital. There are no doctors here." I replied coldly again. Marco's body trembled. He probably couldn't accept the blow of reality. He looked at me and broke down. "You're not Selena. Selena would never talk to me like this. Selena would never say these things to me." "Then who are you?" Why can you make braised pork that only Selena could make? Why do you have Selena's feeling? Marco looked completely unhinged. Marco, calm down. Selena is already dead. The dead don't come back to life. How could she possibly be Selena? Anna stepped in to comfort him. Didn't you come today to talk business cooperation with Cameron? Anna was deliberately trying to divert Marco's attention. In Marco's life, aside from Anna, there was only work. Working day and night was enough to make him forget emotional setbacks. No need to talk. I won't cooperate with Marco. Cameron rejected flatly, then added coldly. Anna, Marco was brought here by you. I don't welcome him. Please take him away. Cameron. Anna tried to explain. The icy aura Cameron radiated was genuinely chilling. Anna had suffered plenty because of Cameron over the years. Gritting her teeth, she still dragged Marco away. After they left, the other guests also departed one after another. A perfectly good birthday party was completely ruined by Marco. Of course, it wasn't my birthday party, so I didn't feel sad. I just felt heartbroken that all the dishes I had worked so hard to make could only be thrown away. Once everyone was gone, Cameron dropped a sentence and left as well. He said, "From now on, you're not allowed to make braised pork again." What did braised pork ever do wrong? That night, the villa was eerily quiet. Ever since those uninvited guests left, the place felt terrifyingly empty. But today was his birthday. The system kept urging me to personally make Cameron a cake, celebrate his birthday with him, and move him emotionally. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to listen. I made Cameron a birthday cake and delivered it to his room. Cameron was smoking on the balcony and didn't turn around. "I'm not eating dinner. It's your birthday today. I made you a birthday cake," I said, my voice intentionally gentle. Cameron's smoking hand paused for a second. He turned around, glanced at me, then at the cake in my hands. Something flickered in his eyes, but the next moment he looked annoyed again. "I don't eat sweets." This man was really hard to please. "Cake doesn't count as sweets. It's mandatory on birthdays." I maintained my smile. "They say eating birthday cake ensures a smooth year ahead." "Take it away," Cameron ordered. "Just try it. It's really good. I worked on it all night. I told you to take it away." I didn't listen. I put the cake down and left first, striking preemptively. It was already made. If he didn't want it, he could throw it away himself. Taking it back would have been embarrassing. After walking out, I suddenly remembered something. I turned back and returned to Cameron's room. The moment I opened the door, I saw Cameron holding a spoon, eating the cake, with cream at the corner of his mouth. Cameron froze. His face turned red. He didn't say a word for a long time. I forgot to say this. I smiled at him. "Happy birthday." Cameron's face seemed to get even redder. Chapter 12. However, after that, my relationship with Cameron did not improve in any substantial way. The system said that conquering Cameron required a slow simmer, no rushing at all. Because this was a temporary assignment, the system didn't give me a deadline this time. It only told me to complete it as soon as possible, without pressuring me. After all, the earlier I finished the mission, the earlier I could return to my own world and live my own life again. Ever since I became a maid, I went out every morning at 7 sharp to buy groceries at the market. Although Cameron had a bad personality, he was generous in other aspects. He directly gave me a Rolls-Royce as my daily vehicle, and my salary was an astonishing amount. As I drove out of the villa compound, I saw a familiar Maybach. I didn't know what Marco wanted, even if I really were Selena. So what? Back then, he had pushed me away without mercy and rejected me outright. What right did he have to appear in front of me now? I pretended not to see him, drove when I needed to drive, bought groceries when I needed to buy groceries. Marco followed me silently the whole way. It wasn't until I finished shopping and was about to leave that he finally couldn't hold back. "Selena." Marco blocked my car door, stopping me from getting in. "You are Selena, aren't you?" How many times do I have to say it? I truly had no patience left for him. "You like biting your lips." Selena liked that too. "You like tying your hair half up." Selena liked that too. "You like shopping at the wet market." Selena liked that too. "The food you cook tastes exactly like Selena's. And even your gestures and expressions when you speak are exactly like hers." So that means I'm Selena? I said mockingly. Marco, with your power and influence in Jing City, wouldn't it be effortless for you to investigate my identity? Marco didn't say anything. From his expression, I could tell he had already checked. He checked and found that I wasn't Selena, so he came here to confirm it in person. The system spoke in my ear. Marco has truly fallen in love with you. I didn't believe it at all. Of course, whether I believed it or not didn't matter. He was already someone irrelevant to me. Move aside, or I'll call the police. I snapped at Marco impatiently. Selena, I'm sorry. I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have let you take the fall for Anna. Are you blaming me for that? So you refuse to acknowledge me now? Marco said with a pained expression. I regret it deeply now. I've even thought about turning myself in, but the day I saw you at Cameron's villa, I couldn't bear to leave you and go to prison. I genuinely couldn't help laughing. Marco was still just as shameless. How could he dress up his crimes in such grand, righteous words? Actually, Marco looked at me deeply. Using the 3 years you spent in prison to make me completely give up on Anna, wasn't that a good thing? At least now, I'll never have any thoughts about Anna again. From now on, I'll love only you. Let's start over, okay? I didn't know how to describe the feeling in my heart at that moment, like I had just swallowed a mouthful of filth. Even the system couldn't hold back. How does he manage to be this disgusting and still this confident? I laughed. The system actually made me laugh. Marco saw my smile and thought I had agreed. He was overjoyed and immediately stepped forward to hug me. I dodged him effortlessly. Don't touch me, you disgust me. Marco stared at me in disbelief, his face full of hurt. He was probably struck hard by my words. Chapter 13. I ignored Marco's emotions entirely. I said, word by word, first of all, I'm not Selena. Second, even if I were Selena, based on what you just said, Selena wouldn't forgive you even if she turned into a ghost. I made it absolutely clear. I truly would never forgive him. Even if I no longer cared about this person, the things he had done could not be erased. In the end, he could choose not to love me, but he had no right to commit unforgivable crimes against me. Not seeking revenge and not pursuing accountability did not mean I didn't hate him. What would it take for you to forgive me? Marco asked. I won't forgive you. Not every mistake can be forgiven just because someone repents. Wrong is wrong. Missed is missed. Selena, give me one more chance. Please, just one more chance. Marco, stop it. If you keep harassing me like this, I really will call the police. I refused coldly. Marco's eyes reddened completely. I couldn't tell whether it was anger or grief. I watched as he suddenly dropped to his knees, lowering his once untouchable, lofty posture, humbled to the dust. I had never seen him like this, not even when it came to Anna. To say my heart felt nothing at all would be a lie, but it wasn't being moved, and it wasn't love. It was the pleasure of revenge. It was the satisfaction of seeing that Marco could end up like this too. Thinking back to the extreme torment and pain I suffered when the system mercilessly erased me in prison, this moment felt incredibly good. If you want to repent, go repent in front of Selena's ashes, I said, turning around and leaving immediately, without the slightest hesitation. When I returned to Cameron's villa, I saw Anna. She was probably there to see Cameron, but clearly, things hadn't gone well. Her face was full of frustration. She must have hit another wall. Victoria? Anna called out to me. I ignored her. You're just a maid. Why are you acting so arrogant? Anna suddenly exploded. She was venting all the frustration she'd suffered from Cameron onto me. I am Mr. Cameron's maid, not yours. So why should I be polite to you? Anna was so angry her face turned red. Did Marco come looking for you? You think just because Marco favors you, you can soar up the ranks and become a phoenix? Let me tell you, the only person Marco will ever love in his life is me. Then please, the two of you should hurry up and stay bound together forever. I replied sincerely. So you're trying to seduce Cameron, aren't you? Anna accused confidently. Her way of thinking was impressively twisted. Anna, whether I like Cameron or not is my business. It has nothing to do with you. How does it have nothing to do with me? Cameron doesn't like you anyway. Even if I like him, you're not an obstacle to me, I said bluntly. Anna was completely stunned, unable to say a single word. I laughed mockingly. The last time I was trying to conquer Marco, Anna was indeed the biggest obstacle. But this time, she truly had no right to flaunt herself in front of me. I turned to leave. Anna suddenly grabbed my arm, just as I was about to shake her off. Smack! A slap echoed through the hall. It stunned me on the spot. Seriously? In this day and age, people slap themselves? At the moment of shock, I saw Cameron coming downstairs. "What's going on?" he asked. Before I could speak, Anna burst into tears. "Cameron, she hit me." Cameron glanced at me, then at Anna. Anna said through tears, "I just asked whether Marco had come looking for her, and she got angry and slapped me. You know, Marco has always liked me. I never said I wanted to interfere in their relationship." "Then she hit you. What are you crying for?" Cameron interrupted impatiently. Chapter 14. I was just as shocked as Anna. Was that really something Cameron would say? Putting aside whether Anna was framing me or not, hitting someone was still wrong, wasn't it? And not even letting the one who got hit cry? Cameron's way of never playing by the rules was honestly amazing. "Cameron, she hit me," Anna said again in disbelief. "Any problem with that?" Cameron replied, "I already told you to leave just now. Why are you still here? If she hadn't hit you, I would have." He even raised his hand, looking as if he truly might strike her. "Why you? Do you like this maid?" Anna was so angry she could barely hold back her tears. She had chased Cameron for so many years. Before, when Cameron said he liked this person or that person, she had accepted it. But now, Cameron was scolding her for the sake of a maid? She probably couldn't accept it even if she died. "Yes, I like her," Cameron admitted outright. My heart skipped a beat again. The system said excitedly beside me, "Host, congratulations. You've completed the mission so quickly this time. Don't get excited yet." I told the system. Cameron previously said he liked someone else just to reject Anna. Could this also be an excuse? "That's possible," the system replied. "Cameron doesn't look like the type to be so casual." What kind of outrageous wording was that? While I was talking to the system, Anna had already broken down completely. "Cameron, why you like a maid but not me? You. Cameron remained cold. I couldn't stay silent anymore either. I had already gone to prison because of her once. I couldn't let Cameron wrong me again because of her. I spoke up loudly. "Sir, I didn't hit her. She slapped herself." "Don't talk nonsense," Anna shouted angrily. "Am I crazy? Why would I slap myself? I'm not stupid." "You're not stupid?" I sneered. "If you weren't stupid, you'd know that every villa living room has surveillance cameras." Anna's face turned pale instantly. That level of embarrassment, she probably wanted to crawl into a crack in the floor. "There should be a surveillance app on the owner's phone. Just pull it up and you'll know." "Shut up!" Anna cut me off. She was already on the verge of a breakdown. "You're the one who should shut up," Cameron said coldly. "I'll say it one last time. Anna, I don't like you, and I never will. Don't come looking for me again. Next time, I'll call the police and report you for trespassing." Anna burst into tears. "Why can't you like me? Why? What's so wrong with me? I've loved you for so many years, Cameron. Why can't you like me? If you don't like me, I'll be with Marco instead. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." As she spoke, she tried to throw herself into Cameron's arms. Cameron grabbed her arm firmly, preventing her from getting close, and dragged her straight toward the door. I watched as Anna was roughly kicked out of the villa. She looked utterly miserable. A woman who was treated like a goddess in front of Marco was worth less than a dog in front of Cameron. When Cameron came back inside, I was still laughing a little too exaggeratedly. "Aren't you going to cook?" Cameron frowned. "Oh," I nodded, then asked as I turned away. "You said you liked me just now?" Cameron blushed. He really seemed to blush easily. Not cold at all anymore. "What nonsense are you thinking? I just said that to get rid of Anna." "I know," I said indifferently. "I was joking, but seriously. Thank you." Cameron pressed his lips together and looked at me. "Thank you for backing me up unconditionally just now," I added. Back when he didn't even know that I hadn't hit Anna, he still chose to protect me. If it had been Marco, for doing that to Anna, I'd probably have been skinned alive already. Don't think you can get close to me. I'll admit it. I cut in. I came here because I wanted to seduce you. Chapter 15. Host. Well done, the system said excitedly. It probably thought I was incredibly brave. But in reality, I was about to disappoint it. I looked at Cameron. In his shocked eyes, there seemed to be emotions I couldn't quite decipher. I'm actually a transmigrator, I said. To put it bluntly, I'm not from this world. System? My current mission is to make you fall in love with me. Once I succeed, I can return to my original world. So I'm just a mission? Cameron sneered. It was obvious he was very unhappy. But I've realized you're a good person, I said honestly, so I don't want to hurt you. Cameron froze for a moment. A faint flicker passed through his eyes. As long as you fall in love with me, I'll leave, and you'll never be able to find me again. But if you don't like me and I keep clinging to you, that would also be a burden to you, just like Anna. Host. You don't want to go back anymore? The system sounded completely speechless. It's not that I don't want to. I just suddenly feel that this method is cruel for the one who's and the one being. In the end, someone always gets hurt. I said softly. Call me lovesick if you want. I just don't want Cameron to be hurt. So you've fallen for Cameron? The system asked. I didn't answer. Instead, Cameron suddenly asked seriously. So, you're Selena, aren't you? He really was smart. I smiled and nodded. Yes, because the mission to Marco failed. I was erased by the system and then reborn into Victoria's body, becoming A again, this time to you. If you can me, will you be erased again? Cameron asked. I don't know yet. It's a temporary mission, and the rules aren't fully defined. So does that mean, if you can never me, you won't be erased and will stay in this world forever? This man really was sharp. Host. You're done for. You're going to be trapped by Cameron, the system said regretfully. I didn't reply. Once I made a choice, I didn't want to regret it. Do you want to return to your own world? Cameron suddenly asked. Yes, very much. I really missed my mom. My memories were already blurry. I only remembered that I grew up in a single-parent family. My mom raised me alone. We depended on each other and lived poorly. And on the very day I received my acceptance letter from the top university in the country, I was suddenly involved in a severe car accident. I couldn't even imagine what my mother must have gone through, plunging from extreme joy into extreme pain. I longed to live and go back to see her, to live and take good care of her. Maybe because that obsession was too deep. After I died, the system chose me. The system said that as long as I completed my mission, I could go back. So I really tried. For success, I resorted to any means, even abandoning all dignity. But now, I suddenly gave up. It wasn't that I didn't miss my mom, it was that I didn't want to hurt others this way. It wasn't fair to anyone. Victoria, no. Selena, no. What's your real name? Cameron seemed a bit exasperated. I think it's Amelia. I could barely remember my real name anymore. Amelia, you're really cruel. Cameron threw out viciously before turning and leaving. What did that mean? The system sighed beside my ear. Maybe, we'll succeed very soon. Chapter 16. After laying everything bare with Cameron, the past few days felt unbearably dull. Ever since that day, Cameron had suddenly disappeared. Literally disappeared. He hadn't come back for several days. The food I cooked no longer had anyone to eat it. I wasn't sure whether I should leave this place or not. But before leaving, I should at least tell Cameron. More importantly, he still owed me the last month's salary. That stingy system wouldn't give me an extra cent. If I couldn't return to my own world, the least they could do was let me live a bit better here. But before Cameron returned, I instead received a call from the police, telling me to go to the station. They said the suspect insisted on seeing me. My first reaction was that Cameron had gotten into trouble. I rushed to the police station in a panic, only to see Marco. Marco had changed so much. He was now so thin he looked almost skeletal, completely unrecognizable. I looked at him in confusion. You wanted to see me? What did you do? Then I hurriedly told the police. Officer, I have nothing to do with him at all. We're not accomplices. The The police explained helplessly. He's charged with obstruction of justice. Back then, the suspect was drunk driving, and he arranged for someone else to take the fall. The evidence is conclusive. He refuses to confess and says he'll only tell the truth after seeing you. I asked, did he turn himself in? He was reported. The officer replied, of course. Marco would never turn himself in. I really shouldn't have expected anything from him. Who reported him? I asked. That information cannot be disclosed. The officer said sternly. Fine. 5 minutes. The officer said to Marco, we'll resume questioning after that. Marco nodded. The police left. Marco looked at me and asked, I've spoken to my lawyer. I'll probably be sentenced to 3 to 5 years. Will you wait for me to get out? No. I answered without hesitation. Selena, I really know I was wrong. I have no feelings for Anna anymore. She came to me a few days ago wanting to get back together, and I rejected her. Now you're the only one in my heart. Wait for me to get out, and I'll marry you, okay? Marco, don't you think you're shameless? I sneered. When you don't like Anna, you come looking for me. What am I? A recycling bin? Marco's face turned ugly. Then he suddenly said excitedly, so you admit you're Selena? Whether I admit it or not doesn't matter. I said coldly, either way, it has nothing to do with you anymore. Selena, do you really think you're better than Cameron? Marco froze, then asked painfully, are you with Cameron? No, before he could relax. I said bluntly, but I've fallen in love with Cameron. No, that's impossible. There's nothing impossible about it. He's more handsome than you, richer than you, and he knows how to care about people. Why wouldn't I like him? But you only ever loved me. Marco refused to believe it. Didn't you also say you only loved Anna before? So why did you suddenly say you love me? People change. No one waits forever in the same place. I stood up, unwilling to waste more words on him. Serve your time properly and reflect. Selena, Marco shouted anxiously. I looked at him impatiently. As long as you don't marry Cameron, I'll keep waiting for you. You really love being a fallback, don't you? I laughed coldly. Do whatever you want. Anyway, I will never like you again in this lifetime. I walked out of the interrogation room and heard a familiar, shrill female scream. I didn't hit anyone. I didn't. It was Selena who hit them. Why won't you believe me? I was framed. Sob. I can't go to prison. If I go to prison, my career will be ruined. I'm a pianist. I can't go to prison. Anna was crying hysterically. Even without seeing her, I could imagine how miserable she looked. I felt no sympathy at all. Marco and Anna should have been brought to justice long ago. I just hadn't had the ability to do it myself. So who did it? One of Marco's enemies? He was ruthless in business. It was inevitable that he made enemies. I didn't think too much about it. As long as they got what they deserved, that was enough. At least it meant Selena hadn't died in vain. Chapter 17. When I returned to Cameron's villa again, I saw Cameron, who I hadn't seen for several days. He seemed a little thinner. His whole demeanor looked somewhat dispirited. Or maybe it was just my imagination. I was about to greet him. He spoke first. I like you. I froze on the spot. I stood there completely petrified for a full 2 minutes. Could it be that Cameron had disappeared these past few days to sort out his own feelings? Someone like him, who rarely let himself feel anything, suddenly catching feelings, maybe even he couldn't accept it himself? But the very next second, a bucket of cold water was poured over me. He said, does this count as you succeeding in so you can go back to your own world? Seriously, could you at least act a little more convincingly? Do you really think that sly, crafty system is stupid? Congratulations, host. The task is complete. The system's notification sounded. So it really is stupid. If I'd known it was this easy to fool, I should have come clean with Marco long ago. Did I really have to suffer through all that? The host may now choose to leave immediately, or leave in 1 hour. Is there a difference? You'll have a full 1 hour to say goodbye, the system said generously. I looked at Cameron. The moment Cameron met my gaze, he looked away. He asked coolly, when are you leaving? The system says at most 1 hour. Before you go, make me a meal, Cameron said. Okay. Capitalists really never forget to squeeze out the very last bit of a worker's remaining value. Braised pork, Cameron ordered. I don't like it too sweet. And I don't like it too soft. And I don't like. So, just not the same as Marco's, right? Cameron didn't answer, basically confirming it. Actually, over these past few months, I'd already figured out Cameron's eating habits completely. The flavors of the dishes I made for him had long since become totally different from what I once cooked for Marco. Will you come back? Cameron asked. Probably not. Cameron didn't say anything else and turned to go upstairs. I went into the kitchen and prepared Cameron's final meal. The system said there were 10 minutes left. I could still go say goodbye to Cameron. I shook my head. I wrote a note, placed it on the dining table, and then said to the system, "That's enough. Really not going to say goodbye?" Even the system sounded a little reluctant. What's there to say goodbye for? He doesn't really like me anyway. He just helped me out casually. Did a good deed. The host still doesn't quite understand our rules, but that's fine. Go back to your own world happily. As soon as the system finished speaking, I felt the world spinning violently. Before I could even react, I heard an incomparably familiar voice in my ears. Amelia, you're finally awake. You scared Mom to death. I finally came back. Epilogue. I returned to my original world. After experiencing so much and living through so many years in that other world, I discovered that when I came back, only 1 week had passed here. I didn't die in the car accident. I was just knocked into a coma. Now that I've woken up, I haven't lost an arm or a leg. With 2 months of recovery, I can still go back to school. Everything returned to what were once the most beautiful days. At last, I can stay by my mother's side. At last, I can take care of her properly and be a good daughter. But for some reason, deep down, my heart always feels empty, as if something is missing. During my years at university, I worked hard to keep my studies and life full and busy. In my senior year, I was recommended, ranked first in the entire university, for an internship at the largest company in the city. On my first day at work, in the elevator, I ran into Cameron. I called out. He was dressed in a sharp suit, still aloof and restrained as ever. He glanced at me and frowned slightly. I quickly looked away. It must just be that he looks similar. We're not from the same world. How could he possibly appear here? I must be imagining things. The elevator doors opened. I stepped out first. The floor he had pressed was the top one, the CEO's office. Someone that high up wasn't someone I dared to mess with. Eat well and take good care of yourself. He suddenly spoke. I turned back, my whole body frozen in the elevator doorway, staring at him in shock. Amelia, you're truly cruel, he said through clenched teeth. Was he talking about how I left without saying goodbye, without even seeing him one last time? Wasn't that precisely so we could meet again someday? Right, I had even written clearly on that note. Smile more. You look better when you smile. And yet now he's still so cold. Like I owe him millions. But dusk never comes too late. The road ahead is still long.